Hello, and thanks for joining us for this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. I'm Paul and joined by Ian and Ken, and together we're your marketing guides. So today we're going to talk about some content best practices. We hear about content marketing all the time, but what does it really mean, and what are some best practices for 2023? So, Ian, start with you. Content marketing, it's not exactly a new term, but some things have changed in the past few years. I think a lot of people, they still think about blog posts when it comes to content marketing, but it's a lot more than that. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, I know Ken was trying to point to the book that we worked on together, content marketing for, content.
Content for local search.
Thank you, Ken. Content that Google loves and prospects devour. So good book, pick it up. had a brain gap there. Yeah. First, before I even talk about kind of what content marketing is and what you can do related to that, like what types there are, and cover a little bit about blogging as well. I think it's really important to understand that to do well at marketing today, for almost any business, there are a few exceptions, right? Some of it might be like fast serve restaurants. There's a few types of businesses where it's not as applicable, but it still helps, right? If you can invest some money into it, it'll still help. But content marketing is really, I've heard it coined a few different ways. So I'll share a few of those. Content marketing is king. You've probably all heard of that. Content marketing is the air marketing breathes, is another term. I think John Jantsch might have coined that from Duct Tape Marketing. The one I actually like the best is content marketing is the fuel by which your marketing engine will run. Because, a lot of times we're talking with clients about how if you introduce a marketing system into your business, it's the engine that will create leads, that will help with client acquisition, retention. It is the fuel. Content marketing is the fuel that will keep that engine going, meaning you will have things to share online that will help you with your SEO. You will have content that you can share in emails that will help invite interest and engage and convert prospects into customers. You will have content to share on social media and other channels, right? So content really is the fuel by which you can move your marketing engine along, which drives you to your ultimate goals. So blogging is a really good one. I'm glad you asked that, Paul, because blogging is essentially building out website content that doesn't really fit within kind of the structure of your business of like, here's our products and services, here's the about us, here's how to contact us. So those are pages, but then usually you have a blog section on your website that is answers to commonly asked questions or long form, trying to attach content or provide answers to long tail keywords that people are searching for. And these are things that you wouldn't really build out a page for this, but it's a specific answer to a specific question or pain point. And so blogging is super powerful. You're making lots of signal connections between the content you produce and what people are searching for on Google, which of course everybody does. Social media.
You said long tail keyword. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So a short tail keyword would be something like, imagine if you're looking for a bookkeeper for your business, you might just look up bookkeeper, right? Google knows where you're located. It'll attach your location. So you'll see a list of bookkeepers in your area. But say you're I was going to use an example that is quite common nowadays, but is a little bit, some people might have ethical issues with it, but say you're a cannabis business, a cannabis provider, and it's legalized in your state or province. Finding a bookkeeper that provides services to a cannabis service or specializes in that can be quite hard. So you might use a specific long tail keyword like cannabis bookkeeping service, or like there's numerous ways to do that, or bookkeeping for cannabis businesses, tax services, right? Taxation is a big deal when you're doing one of these specialized services in a specialized industry. So those are kind of long form keywords, long tail keywords that people are searching for that many businesses would not build out content for. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well enough, Ken? Any other pointers on that?
I think that's good.
Okay.
I think you had an interesting example.
It's actually a real life example. So
it is absolutely. And, you know, I mean, if that's the specialty of your business, why the heck do you just want to try to be found for bookkeeper?
You know? Right. Yeah. Because ideally what these ranking for long tail keywords essentially makes you a bigger fish in a smaller pond, which it only can help you be more successful.
Yeah.
Just real quick, I won't go into great detail, but some other forms of content marketing that are really valuable are videos, right? You want to be creating video content because, again, not for the sake of creating it, but because people consume it. They're looking for that. Infographics, webinars, ebooks, podcasts, case studies, white papers, email marketing. I mean, the list just goes on and on. But the key to effective content marketing is knowing what your audience is looking for. And we'll get into this more, but creating the content in the form that they prefer. And when you nail that, you will create a great return on investment for your content marketing dollars.
All right, cool. So Ken, Ian talked about, you know, blog posts, and speaking of blog posts and putting content on your website, hub and spoke model is something that people talk about a lot. What is that? What does it mean?
Yeah. So think of the hub as kind of those core, you know, services, the main things that you deliver, your product, you know, either product categories or your services. And then the spokes are really the supporting content that helps to feed that and prop that up. So, you know, when you look at this in totality, your hub structure with the hub and the spokes, you're talking about a hub page and then several supporting pieces of content, pages, blog posts, videos, whatever it makes sense. Typically it's written content though. And then, you know, in totality, that all of that content may wind up being tens of thousands of words. And you do that because you want to send strong signals to Google. This is my core service, and here's all of the stuff that we do and how we answer all of the questions that our customers have about our core product category or core service. And so, you know, you can, you know, some people have been advocating for, you know, writing really long blog posts, you know, thousands of words, you know, 5,000, even longer. You don't necessarily have to do that with the hub and spoke model. Your hub page may have thousands of words, probably should have thousands of words, but you know, maybe 2,500, you know, but it's going to take a while to build out. Right. I mean, so for example, you know, let's say that you're a kitchen remodeler. You another way to think about it and organizing this is a table of contents or an outline. You know, within kitchen remodeling, what are things that people have to think about? They have to think about planning. They have to think about design. They want to see, you know, examples of trending design ideas and portfolios, maybe of work that have been done. They certainly want to see frequently asked questions. They probably have questions around how to hire the right contractor. Should I go through an interior designer? Do I hire a contractor directly? You know, what are the criteria and things, and how can I help evaluate the right person for my job? You know, just that whole series of things. That's kind of the structure of your hub page. And then you have to fill in the details. And so filling in the details is going to be, where you're putting kind of flesh on the bone is where you're going to have a series of blog posts or pages that you need to write to provide that supporting content, and the hub page is going to link out to all of those different spokes. And so it's incredibly powerful. It's something that takes a lot of work, but it's a real SEO powerhouse. Absolutely an SEO powerhouse. And again, we talk a lot about this in this podcast. I can't stress this enough. SEO is driven around how you answer the problems that you solve. You cannot do SEO unless you're just hyper local, fairly simple type of a business or a service or product set, without really answering a lot of problems. And as Ian mentioned, restaurants, maybe an example, you're not going to need to build out a ton of questions about why am I hungry to get somebody
a lot,
to get to your restaurant, so but if you're talking about something that's like kitchen remodeling, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of an investment that somebody's going to be making. There are a lot of decisions, there are a lot of questions, there's a lot of confusion, in the contractor space, and the contractor space is not unique. I mean, marketing has, some challenges with this as well. There are a lot of people who've been burned by hiring the wrong business. And so they're going to ask questions, and but the reality is people are doing research online before they're talking to a business. And that's why this is so critically important. And that's why it drives me nuts when I hear somebody say, well, I'm paying $600 a month for SEO. And it's like, okay, that's not real SEO. Maybe it's on-page SEO, but it's probably not even creating new content. It's probably just going in and making sure that and working on one page or two pages a month, and then charging you for some hosting and maybe some website maintenance. It's not SEO. SEO is driven by content. It's all of the things that Ian said in the introduction. It's the air that marketing breathes. It's the I don't remember what all
the
you
fuel,
said.
man. The fuel
drives your marketing engine. All of those.
It's like a force multiplying fuel.
You betcha. Absolutely.
And one thing about the hub and spoke is probably goes more to structure in the way people consume content. People don't read, they skim.
Right.
And if they're looking for they may do a search and your hub page pops up and they click on that result and they're looking for a specific thing. If they can skim through there, and you said it links out to these other pages and those pages link back to that hub page, they can skim through that hub page and find what they need quickly. That's going to increase time on site. And then, Ken, that goes back to what you said about solving their problem. They'll say, hey, this company knows what they're doing. They have the answer to my problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it also has real benefits for Google's ability to crawl your website. Internal linking is really critical for Google crawling and understanding what all your website is about. And if it's crawling the hub and spoke structure that you've created, and you've done it well, man, you're going to have a powerhouse on your hands.
Yeah, orphan pages are a bad idea.
Yeah.
So, Ian, I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but something that we hear about with content is using the customer's voice. What does that mean, and why is it important?
Yeah, there's a few definitions out there. The one I'm going to use, because I think it's most relevant to this conversation, is that it really means incorporating the language and the perspective of the target audience into the messaging of your marketing. So your website, your marketing campaigns, your ads, everything, right? Like so one of the biggest challenges I think every business deals with is getting their head out of thinking about their website, their marketing, that it's all about them. It's not about you, the business, at all. It's not about your personal tastes. It's not about what channels you like personally. It's about your audience, because that ultimately, you're the only reason you're investing in any kind of marketing is to actually, and unless you just want to do a brand awareness campaign. And then again, if you want to do an effective brand awareness campaign, it's all about the target audience anyways, but it's about the audience. It's about the people you're trying to attract. So you need to, first of all, really understand who these people are, right? Understand who they are, understand the language and the values that will resonate with them. You need to create the content that speaks directly to their needs, to the problems that they want to solve, like Ken said, and to their interests. And this is important because, first of all, it will attract them, right? You know, we're attracted to people that are attractive to us. And so if you have a particular problem you're trying to solve, people will be attracted to you if you can show and speak in their language, not highly complex language, not internal speak to your business or your industry. That's a very common issue as well. But to engage them at their level of understanding to the problem, at their level of understanding to the solution. And content is really, really key to that, right? If people are looking for, you know, if they have a dripping faucet, well, you as a plumber can provide a video of how to solve this, how to diagnose it, how to solve it. But then, of course, like most people are scared to death of water damage. So, you know, at the end of the video, you're presenting yourself as the very best option, who's just educated them, who's showing that you're a reasonable person through the video, that you speak well, that you get their issue, and that you can solve their problem. The chances are very high that they will reach out to you as the plumber of choice. So that increases conversions, right? It feels they understand that you as a brand, a business, understand them. And it can also increase brand loyalty, engagement, and of course, sales. You know, just as I was thinking of this, I created a list, excuse me, of, it's all great to talk about the customer's voice and about the audience. Here's some ways that businesses can think about learning the customer's voice. So surveys, polls, right? Even if you're face to face, ask them questions, right? Like, what caused you to reach out to us today? You know, what have you used other plumbers? What has your experience been like? Because sometimes the sharing of anecdotes, of stories, can uncover gaps in the marketplace. You know, this is always something that blows me away, but we've heard this over and over in any kind of home service business, whether it's landscaping, tree removal, electricians, you name it, renovations, of course. But anytime you're in somebody's space, whether it's home or commercial, cleaning up, like that is nobody wants to clean up your mess, right? And if you're an electrician and you're cutting wires, you're leaving all the little bits everywhere, you know, that people are then stepping on, and right. Nobody wants that. So even understanding, the only way you can understand that that's a pain point for people is by asking them, by hearing them. Monitoring social media conversations, right? That's a really great way to learn too. Online reviews, absolutely, right? If people are giving you both positive and negative reviews, or even neutral reviews, they're revealing things about their experience. Testimonials, of course. Incorporating customer feedback. So of course, reviews are like that, but you can also do NPS, Net Promoter Score, surveys after you complete work, which is how likely are you to refer someone to us, and then asking probing questions after that. Using language that they understand. Focus groups. You can always do focus groups. I hate focus groups, but you can do focus groups. I just find people change when they're in a group setting. You got the whole, you know, social nuances that happen in group settings.
Right.
You can customer inquiries, chatbots, right? Like all of these things where somebody is interacting with your business, you can learn so much about their experience, and you can learn from that, and you can ask further information too. user generated content, right? If somebody shares a video of this is my experience at this restaurant, wow, you as the restaurant owner better be paying attention to that, right? Whether it's positive or negative.
Right.
There's just so many options. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that Donald Miller says in StoryBrand is you confuse, you lose.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I think, when I look at websites, the confusion is you're talking about yourself and you're talking about your business in your language.
Yeah.
And what I love about StoryBrand is it's a paradigm shift. I mean, and even a lot of marketing companies, we help you tell your brand story. Wrong. That's the wrong answer, folks. You need to be telling the customer's story. The customer is the hero of your story, and you need to be playing the guide. And in order to do, and when you do this paradigm shift, it helps you realize what you need to be in terms of using the customer voice and building out the clarity, focusing on the problems that you solve for them, and why it's important to them and what motivates them. It's about your customers. It's not about you. And I think way too many people completely forget about that. I'd say 90% of all websites are not written to the right audience.
Yeah. I once heard the term belly button gazing, because you're just looking at yourself, right? When you should be looking at other people. But one of the examples that comes to mind about that, Ken, and I think it's relevant, is we're working with a few different financial consultants these days in the bookkeeping, accounting, and fractional CFO world. And one of the things that I find interesting when we do a total online presence audit and we're looking around at both how they speak about themselves and the competitors speak about themselves is that, yes, of course, you have to use the term fractional CFO. You have to use the term virtual CFO because people do search for that. But what I find fascinating is that the businesses are so focused on this is the service we provide that they forget that nobody really cares about that. What they care about is I'm having trouble scaling up my business and understanding my financials. First of all, managing my financials, but understanding them in a way that gives me the insights that knows how do I properly use the equity in my business, the pricing structures we have. How do I use all that as a tool in order to move me in the direction I want to go, and use data and financial data as insightful to inform my decision making? And that's where I find, like, if businesses understood that people are looking for the solution to their pain, that would solve so many of these problems with websites, right? Just as you were saying, stop focusing on the terminology, focus on the solutions you provide.
Yeah, I think of it as relatability, and you talked about this a little bit. And you see this a lot in the financial sector, and like investing, where they use this technical wording, and you have someone that's new to investing, they have no idea what you're talking about. You have to explain things in a way that they're going to understand it, not in a way that your colleagues are going to understand it.
Yeah. And if those companies actually figured, like, just, it's such a simple message. I have this, I want it turned into this, right? Like that's ultimately what investing is, right? That's all they care about. Like, tell me that you're going to be able to do that effectively. Send me all the trust signals that I'm looking for. The deal is done, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to be a financial expert in order to invest. I just need a financial expert that's going to help me do that without the gobbledygook.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Google's algorithm, it's gotten pretty sophisticated over the years. We've talked about this a little bit in the past. 10 years ago, you could just stuff a bunch of keywords on your website and you would actually rank, and now you'll get penalized for that. And content producers talk about creating content based on result type. So what is that, and how do you do it?
Well, I think the easiest way to kind of get your brain around this is to just look at what's happening with a Google search result now. if you do a Google search result, you used to get basically, that you always are going to get the ads, if it's a local search, you're going to get the maps, and then you're going to get the organic listings. And the organic listings historically have just been um, links to web pages. And then there's the pagination. So down at the bottom of that page, you have to click 2 to get to the next set of results. Well, Google's changed that. And so based on the nature of the query that somebody puts in, it's going to start to deliver rich media type content as a part of the search result. And by rich media, I mean, it can be audio, video, or image based. And so that's really what's happening. Google is starting to make the search result page experience feel more like you're scrolling through a news feed on a social media platform, and it's pulling in broader set of content of these content types than it has ever before. People need to realize that Google Images is the second most searched thing on the web. So Google search, Google Images, and then you've got YouTube as the third. That's making up about 90+% of all searches right now. And yeah, I know that there's a trend, that a lot of younger people are just doing searches on TikTok. And, we've talked about whether or not TikTok's even going to be allowed in the US. I don't know what's going on in Canada, and maybe you can talk about that, but TikTok could very realistically be banned in this country in a matter of months. I mean, a lot of state governments have already taken initiatives. The federal government has taken initiative. They see it as a real security risk, and they're trying to limit access, not to piss people off, but to protect their identities. And so, but because of the power of TikTok, you're now seeing short form video. YouTube Shorts is now popping up, showing up in the news feed. Longer form regular YouTube videos are showing up in the news feed. Based on what you're searching for. Images, frequently show up depending on the nature of the search that you're doing. So I think it's only going to continue to accelerate, and Google is trying to create, I think, a comparable experience. And as we get into the world of AI, that I think there's going to be even more stress for Google to provide more of a news feed style user interface for the search results.
Yeah, one thing that if you're a business and you want to rank for a certain keyword or topic, whatever it is, if you do a Google search for that particular keyword and Google returns YouTube videos, then you should probably do some videos. If the search results tend to be bulleted lists, then you should probably do bulleted lists. And that, that's just another way to look at it. Do some searches on what you want to rank for and see what Google is returning. Is it long form content? Is it YouTube videos? Is it a bullet list? Is it a how to? That's another way to find out what Google's looking for.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So, Ian, talk about creating content, and it's not cheap. Creating content is not cheap. It costs money. And there's 50 million channels out there. So how do you measure ROI for content, and can you? And how does a business decide what channels they should be on? I'm pretty sure not every business has to be on every channel out there. So how do they decide what channel they should be on?
Sure, those are good questions, Paul. The first one, I want to refine the question slightly in that you said content isn't cheap. I would say good, and I know you agree to this. So good content isn't cheap. Good content actually takes work and should be informed by keyword research and by understanding your audience and and written well.
You have a thought? Well, that's a great point, Ian. there are a lot of people today who still buy syndicated content, a piece of content because it's cheap, and they feel like, okay, I'm getting new stuff on my website, and it's not helping them from an SEO perspective at all. And if nobody's finding it because of SEO, nobody's probably even reading it. But you can get it cheap because it's sent and it's distributed and sold to hundreds, thousands, millions of people at the same time. So great point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's even industries where it's like the industry standard is duplicate content, like the real estate industry, right? Like, there's
accounting and legal.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to explain that a little bit more, like, so creating good content. Before I move on to that though, just to support Ken, your point in another way that's really trendy, of course, is AI, right? So a lot of people are hopping on the ChatGPT wagon. I love ChatGPT. I use it an awful lot. But I've even seen circumstances where people think, hey, I can just ask ChatGPT to create a blog post for me, and I'm going to copy it exactly as is, throw it on my website, see what happens. I actually know a marketer who tried that, and then they didn't even read the content. And then like 5 days later, they're like, hey, I should really read that content, which is disturbing in the least, but to say the least, but that they did that. But then they read it and they're like, this is crap. I need to take this off my website immediately, or actually take the time to rewrite it. So AI content, definitely a trend there. Is it free? Yeah. Like there's a lot of free stuff out there that will not help your business, right? So free is not always best, right? It's like having your nephew build, I'm just using nephews as an example, but having your nephew build your website, save you a ton of money. Is it going to actually get you where you want to go? Probably not. But so let's all assume you need to invest wisely for good content in order to make content marketing work. What's the ROI? How do you measure it? So to me, it depends how you're using it, of course, and where you're using it, because your measurements change by the channel and by how you're using it. But here's a few ideas for you. First of all, if you're using it as downloadable content, you can measure the downloads, right? That's a pretty simple way to do it. Is that the total metric? Absolutely not, because if it's on a hidden page somewhere and it's not getting traffic, you're not going to get downloads. So it's how you use it as well. For me, though, thinking about, I love using the framework of the marketing hourglass from Duct Tape Marketing, because it really takes the sales funnel or the marketing funnel and then builds it out with a bottom that goes from know, like, trust, try, buy, then repeat, and then refer. And that's the growth at the bottom, the hourglass at the bottom. But what's really great about that framework is that you're looking at it from both the user perspective, the target audience, and saying, well, what information do they need? Or in this particular conversation, what content do they need at each of those steps? What kind of content are they looking for at the know phase, at the trust phase, at the try phase, at the buy phase, right? And then so on. And so as a business, you can help move them through that hourglass, but you can also measure, meaning, so at the top of the funnel, right, you have content that you're using to attract people. Well, if it's on your website, you can use website traffic stats. You can use all sorts of different stats related to that, and downloads or whatever it is. But the way I really like to measure it is understanding that this is a continuum, that people are moving through this. I actually like to look at conversion ratios. So not even just pure conversions, but looking at each of these steps that people are moving through and saying, okay, before we built out this content, what was the conversion ratio going from a no to a like, from a like to a trust, from a trust to a try, from a try to a buy? And in different businesses, this is going to look different, right? You can even do this in your person-to-person sales process, in that, like we're talking with a client right now where we're saying, well, talk to me about your sales process. You want to improve your conversion ratios when your people go in for a demo into somebody's home, because it's a home services business. And then you want to create a higher conversion of people calling in, a higher conversion of people getting demos in-house, a higher conversion of people accepting your proposals. And at each of those stages, you can do things, especially from a content marketing standpoint, of equipping your sales team, your inside sales team, your receptionist, your ultimately with the goal of equipping the consumer with information that will help motivate them through that process. And those steps are conversions, right? Mini conversions, all to the goal of the buy conversion. And so you can measure your conversion ratio now of, we get 100 people, 100 calls right now. 25 of those calls turn into demos. From those 25 calls, we get 3 purchases, right? Or something like that. If that's your ratio right now. And then as you introduce new content into that flow, you can then say, has it improved our conversion ratio or has it not, right? So to me, that's kind of the gold standard because that's where it matters most to the business. But there's all sorts of metrics that you as a business can track in order to determine your ROI. So is it improving our search rankings, right? That's an important one. Is it increasing our customer engagement? Maybe that's on social media. Maybe it's likes, shares, comments. Maybe, from an email marketing side, is our open rate going up? Is our click-through rate going up? All of those kind of things. Customer feedback surveys. So yeah, there's lots you can measure. And then you also asked, Paul, I went on a long time with that, but I think it's so important, right? I think the ultimate goal for every business should be how much money have I invested in my marketing? How much have I gotten out of it? Right? That's how you're going to know whether you're getting a good ROI. The second question you said, actually, before I move on, Ken, Paul, anything to add to that first part? Or did I beat it to death?
No, I think it's good because it's not like paid advertising where, okay, I paid this much and this is what I got for that. The organic content, organic traffic, organic content, that's completely different. And there is not always a direct correlation.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's an age-old pain point of advertisers with brand visibility, brand awareness, right? Why are you doing this? I want brand awareness. Okay, well, how are you measuring brand awareness now? And how will you measure it after you do it? Because brand awareness is it's kind of like water through your fingers. It's a little bit tough to measure and it's not very tangible. So those are always tough, but there are ways even to do that, right? But the second part of your question, I think, was equally important. And that's, there's channels abound, right? Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Pinterest, Instagram. I mean, we could go on and on and on all day just talking about all the channels that exist now and that are just trending. But the truth goes back to where we were talking earlier, is about where's your audience, right? You absolutely should be where your audience is. So don't blow your brains out on every channel. Focus on the ones where your audience or your prospective audience is. And my view is that no matter what you do, it should be sustainable. You don't want to, one of the common things we see when we do audits for new clients is, we ask the client, you've probably heard this, Ken and Paul, but we ask the clients, like, are you blogging? Well, yeah, I blog. And then you go to their website and the last blog was 2 years ago. So, and they only did 3 in the whole span of the lifespan of their website, right? Or they did a burst.
They weren't lying.
They weren't lying in the scheme of their lifetime, but as far as relevance to the people searching for content today, they're not blogging, right? Like they're not providing they're not doing what blogging is supposed to do. You're right. But the key is really your target audience, your resources, and your goals. What are your goals, for being on a social channel? What resources do you have in-house, outsourced? And who is your target audience? And if you use those 3 criteria to help you determine where to be, and ultimately, if you have a strategic marketing plan, I always say that's the filter those are the glasses you put on in order to filter out the junk, right? This is what we're focused on. This is our budget. These are all the things we're going to do. Does this new thing fit? Yes, no. It's a pretty simple equation. If yes, what is it going to replace if we want to keep our budget the same? And is it better than that thing? If no, then get rid of it. Don't focus on it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Like what you said earlier, I think, was it Harry Truman said, give me a one-handed economist, because he was getting economic advice, and they said, well, on one hand, the economy could do this, and on the other hand, the economy could do this. And he said, what we need is a one-handed economist.
That's a funny quote.
So I had not heard that.
I think it was Harry Truman. Could be wrong. I think it was him. But Ken, Ian talked about this a little bit. It's AI content. It's going to solve all my problems. AI generated content is here, but there's some problems with it, and sometimes you should use it, sometimes you shouldn't. Can you talk about AI content a little bit? Problems, benefits?
Yeah. So I think Ian talked about one of the problems, which is you can't just assume that what's spit back out at you is 100% accurate or even well written or well thought out. Look, AI tools are great. I mean, but they should be seen as productivity boosts, and maybe helping you fill in the gap, maybe helping you get better topical coverage and some things like that. But at the end of the day, you still need a human to take this content and write it, because humans are going to be reading the content on your website. And Paul, you're exactly right. They're going to skim it first. And so, you mentioned what type of content is Google returning in the search result if it's a bulleted list. Is that what you got generated back from the AI tool that you used? Is that the right type of, right content type you should be putting on your website? You can't just willy-nilly use this stuff, slap it on your website and say, woohoo, I'm done. Look, I got 10 blog posts done this month. So you definitely have to have a human go through it and edit it. You're also going to miss all of the opportunities of the internal linking. If you just slap it on your website as a page or a post, so you're missing massive SEO opportunity there. And at the end of the day, I think we have a really strong signal from Google, about what they want to see, and that is, with the helpful content update that they did. Which is really, I mean, we refer to it as EAT, and we've talked about that recently on this podcast. And I believe we also talked about it with Kyle Roof recently as well. Google's looking for expertise, authority, and trust. Okay, so yeah, maybe an AI tool can give you pretty good coverage for expertise, authority, and trust, but probably not. And even now, Google's gone and added an extra E, a second E, called experience. And so that's really where the human element comes into play. So I think you've got to take those factors in. And, if you're in a type of business where the information that you provide is life or death making, and it's critical, your money, your life is another concept that that Google talks about. You can't afford to have bad content. You just simply can't, and you're going to be punished in the search rankings if that content is seen to be inaccurate or incorrect. So yeah, just look, AI tools are great. You can't help but be inundated by them right now. Experiment around with them for sure. I mean, use them. They're definitely productivity tools, but they're not the end all be all. You have to look at what output they're producing, and really analyze that and see if that's how you want your business represented. And if you want to help be found in search, you absolutely have to be reviewing that and paying attention to what these different tools are spitting out.
And don't assume what it's spitting out is true.
Absolutely.
There's been some great case studies of where the AIs have been spitting out absolute falsehoods. So you need to know what you're talking about before you
Right.
even do it. Yeah.
Right. So even look, the output may be really good.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you should just blindly put it on your website. You still need to go vet it, research it, and make sure, if it's telling you something you didn't know, you probably ought to go do some research on it. Okay. Yeah, this is right, or no, it's absolutely wrong. We landed a monkey on the moon. Did we? Well, you better go check.
If what it's giving you is wrong, put it on social media and you're fine. I'm joking. Okay. But yeah, and those are some good points. And like ChatGPT is only relevant up to 2021. So anything recent, it's not going to give you updated content. And John Mueller was asked recently about AI content, and kind of paraphrasing here, but basically what he said is Google doesn't have a problem with AI content as much as it has a problem with crappy content.
Yeah.
And if you take that AI generated content and a person looks at it and fixes it, I mean, I think it's great as a starting point, but you still have to have that human element involved in the content process.
And is it going to pass the unique content standard as well?
Right.
I mean, today maybe, because it's still relatively new, right? But as more and more people start using the same prompts and it starts generating, the same or really similar results.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely, I can see that becoming an issue.
The pace people are using it and the lack of thought that they're putting behind using it. Yeah, absolutely. So,
Ian, the idea of repurposing content isn't exactly new, but I think it's something people forget about. So, is repurposing content a good idea, a bad idea? Should people do it? And like, what about outdated? If any website that's been around for a while has outdated or underperforming content, what do you do with that?
Yeah, great questions, Paul. Should we reinvent the wheel every day? Why would you? The wheel's pretty good. You might improve upon the wheel, but you don't want to reinvent the wheel every day. So content, if you've invested in content in the past, if it's good content, like we were talking about earlier, then it's going to continue to be good content. Probably it just needs to be updated or repurposed. So there's a couple different ways you can do this, right? First of all, you can use it in different channels, or you can change the format, right? There's lots of different things you can do with it. I was reading an interesting article from Neil Patel, who's an SEO expert, and I think anybody in the SEO world knows of him because he's very good at it. But one of his comments about low-hanging fruit for him was, first of all, when you do some blog posts, some content creation, you should include the year, right? Because people are looking within a particular year for a particular topic, and that helps, not on every blog post, but on kind of ones that are a pillar type of content, something of real value. And so his low-hanging fruit was every year he and his team, probably his team more than him now, go through and they change the date, right? So it's the new year. So if you have existing content on your website and it has 2021 or 2019, or if your copyright on the bottom of your webpage says 2017, it's time to update that, right? So just even doing that can help you. But then going through the content and adding in, first of all, saying it was updated on this date, but then adding in what's new, what's fresh. So you're not recreating the whole content piece. You're just improving it and making it more relevant for today. So the alternative to that is to actually create competing content where you're almost reproducing everything you built and you're adding in, or you're naming it or titling it by this year. And that can create content cannibalism on your website, which is not good. So repurposing content can be super powerful. again, it goes back to your audience. So if your audience, like here's an example, say you created a video 3 years ago. It's a good video, doesn't look dated. If it does look dated and it's good content still, just update it, re-record it, right? Super simple. That's repurposing content. Add in some new fresh stuff. If it still looks relevant, you can repurpose that into, if it's a long form video, like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, a half-hour webinar, an hour webinar, heck, like split that into smaller topics, repurpose it on YouTube, put it up as reels, put it up as shorts, convert it into a blog post. One of the real easy repurposing things that we often see, especially if you take a very strategic approach to content development and you have a content plan for the year, is you create your content plan in such a way that essentially each new piece of content builds on each other and forms a greater piece of content like an ebook, right? So, if you're planning on building out, one blog post or 2 blog posts a month on a topic or on your particular industry, and you do it in such a way that's really smart, you can then build out an ebook, which is a downloadable piece of content that people will give you their information for, right? So there's lots of ways to do that. Repurposing content achieves a few things. It gives you a few benefits. It helps you reach new audiences by adapting the content for different channels and different formats. It helps your business reach new audience who might not have seen your content before. It saves you time and resources. I don't think we need to expand on that too much, but it's much easier to repurpose a piece of content than start fresh. It extends the lifespan of the content. So again, going back to the ROI of your content, you've just given it new life. It'll last longer. And it can improve your SEO, which of course helps with attraction and retention and conversion. So overall, repurposing content is an absolute slam dunk for your business. If you're not doing it, you should, right? If you say you just have a pretty simple website, you haven't been blogging, but you've been in business for a while and you have brochures, pull those brochures out and you might have a gold mine of content that you can then build out into new content for the digital community. I think updating old content, changing the format, combining multiple pieces into a larger form, re-promoting the content, right? That can always bring new life into it. But all of us should be repurposing for sure.
Yeah, I think you talked about putting the date on there and building out other pieces of content from a piece of content. I think that's a good idea because it depends on the type of content. Like the basic concept of building a retaining wall probably hasn't changed for like 5,000 years, but there are different kinds of retaining walls and newer and different materials. So you could expand on that just with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Ken, one thing we haven't talked about is a content strategy, and I'm guessing that's kind of important. So what is a content strategy? And I guess talk about a content calendar a little bit, and how does someone go about creating a content strategy?
Well, I think Ian did touch upon it, a couple of times throughout this podcast. Really, you've got to think about it as, looking at your overall marketing strategy and doing that, and that strategy is going to allow you to build the content that's going to support that strategy. And so if you haven't done the strategy work, you can't build a content strategy. You can, but is it aligned with what you're really trying to accomplish? And is it also aligned with the business goals and objectives? Because the marketing strategy has to be also aligned. So you got to work on alignment first. That's a topic for another podcast, and I think we've already probably covered that, or we're covering it coming up soon, because Ian, I know you love to talk about the whole marketing strategy component. Mm-hmm. What I like to do is, I've come up with this prescriptive content plan, and it takes the hard work that you did in your marketing strategy work, the identification of your ideal customers, where understanding the customer personas, where are they spending time, all of that kind of stuff. and you kind of bake it into this prescriptive content plan structure that I like to use, which really has 6 main components. Your content themes. So what are you going to be creating content about? That's going to, like we talked about, focusing on the problems that you solve, making sure your core products and services are included in that, all those kinds of things. Content channels. Ian just talked about that. What channels are people using? And this has to be aligned with where they're at in the buyer's journey, or as Ian, talked about, the marketing hourglass. And you may have some content at one level, like the know or like. Maybe it's not the right channel for another stage of the hourglass. Content rhythms. How frequently are you going to post content to the different channels that you select? The content mix, which really is kind of the content type, right, that we talked about. What types of content do you need to create? Are you going to be doing infographics, blog posts, checklists, ebooks, webinars, videos, podcasts? What is that mix? Content assignments. Who's going to be responsible for doing all of these things? And then content repurposing. How can you take long form content, a long form video or a long form blog post, chunk that out and repurpose that for social media? Because that's going to get you so much more mileage for that long form piece of content. Especially if it's evergreen, where you can take and build a series of great social media posts that keep driving people back to that longer form piece of content, that's a really powerful model. So those are the kind of ways I like to look at thinking about organizing around a content strategy and a content, building out a content plan.
Yeah, something you talked about in there and goes back to the beginning of the podcast where you said they're paying $600 a month for SEO. You should really have content, and you talked about this, for the different stages of the buyer journey. And that takes work. That takes time and effort and like you said, you're going to put that on different channels, because if someone's at the beginning of the buyer journey, or it's about brand awareness, that's probably a good place for content on social media. But social media is not a high converting platform
for most businesses, right?
Correct. So yeah, that takes time and effort in creating content for these different stages of the buyer journey. You have to think that through, and not only what type of content, but where are you going to put it?
Yeah, and a lot of people think, Ian, I'd love for you to chime on this too, but Paul, you and I know we always get so much pushback from our clients. You're posting to Facebook too much, or you're posting to Instagram or Twitter too much. And it's like, we're posting the right amount, to get the best traction from that channel. And the reality is, you probably should be posting to Facebook like twice a day. You might be able to post on Instagram maybe 3 or 4 times a day, Twitter even more potentially. These things are rivers, right? They're flowing past you in the news feed. And so you've got to improve the possibility and the likelihood that you're going to show up, because a lot of social media really is the strength of it for most businesses is going to be visibility and awareness, or know and like, and maybe some trust elements. So you got to understand the content rhythms of what's required by channel. And then you've got to figure out a way, well, how in the heck am I going to produce, 2 Facebook posts every day? Well, that's where a repurposing strategy can come in and be a really powerful way to answer that particular challenge of the content rhythm on the right content channel. So this all feeds together.
Yeah.
All right, those are some good points. Did we miss anything? Does anyone have anything to add? Because we're at an hour here.
No, I would go ahead.
Go ahead. Ken. Oh, well, I'll just say, we've talked about this before. We write about it in our book, Content for Local Search. Every business is a natural content creator. Every business we talk to says they think they struggle creating content. They struggle creating usable content and quality content. But you're a natural content creator. Everything you do, even if you don't write anything, if you're a painter, your work speaks volumes. The images and the videos, that's content, people. And it's critical content. If people are looking to hire you, they're not looking to hire you because they like how many brush strokes you might use to get a job done. They're hiring you because they want to see what the final quality of the product is. So
Yeah.
Read the book. It's a good one.
Yeah. I would even add to that it's not always, yes, the final product is what it's all about, but I would even suggest for any type of service-based business, it's even just how you communicate within those videos that can actually pave the way to success, because people have an innate fear of having other people in their home or in their business and of screwing up or not providing what they say they're going to provide. And so if you can come across as a reasonable human being that is very good at what they do, provides what you say you will do, right? We all just want people to be promise makers and keepers. And so it's, if you can convey that in a trustworthy manner, even if it's not highly refined, right? If you're a painter and you're showing your work, but you're explaining why you might have, cut the molding, meaning cutting the painting of the molding in a particular way, or you used a particular form of you sprayed the doors instead of rolling them because it doesn't leave the orange peel and all, right? Like you talk like that and you explain the value in human terms that people can understand. Wow, like you're creating trust in a big way. So yeah. And my only other final point, we haven't talked about paid advertising at all, but content. Wow. Like if you're investing in paid advertising and you can marry good content to that, with the understanding that, of course, every person that sees your ad, you want them to buy from you, but you have to understand that not everybody's ready to buy. And so content can be that secondary call to action that can build the trust, move them to try. It essentially is a try, right? So it's a try offer. And that can pave the way to greater success and good ROI for your paid advertising as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think this is probably a good place to wrap up. Thanks for joining us today. And thank you, Ken and Ian, for sharing your thoughts on the topic. Thanks to our listeners. If you find this helpful and you think somebody could benefit, share it with them. And Ian, take us out.
Yeah. Until next week, everyone, keep calm and mark it on.